Why was she always the one people overlooked? In the buzzing sprawl of Riverside Military Supply Depot, forklifts whined, trucks hissed their brakes, and officers barked clipped commands. Yet one figure moved almost unseen through the chaos. Michelle Hayes, cargo loader. 34, hair pulled back into a regulation-type ponytail, gray eyes that never seemed to rest. To most, she was just another contractor, guiding her forklift between rows of steel containers. Efficient, forgettable. But invisibility had become her shield. Every morning, as the Texas sun poured its merciless heat across the endless concrete slabs, she blended in among the others. Oil-stained jacket, gloves worn thin, steel-toed boots scuffed with years of labor. The kind of uniform anonymity no one questioned. She wanted it that way, needed it that way. 3 years of silence had taught her the power of being ignored. And yet the truth was always heavier than the pallets she lifted. Hidden under fabric and sweat was something no one expected to find in a cargo bay. A faded blue ribbon, a bronze cross, a story engraved in steel. A medal that was never supposed to be seen again. Not here, not now. Hayes, you're falling behind. Staff Sergeant Kyle Hunter's voice cut across the loading dock like the snap of a whip. He carried himself with a swagger he hadn't earned. Tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform sharp enough to impress visiting brass, but his knowledge of logistics shallow as a puddle after rain. Michelle didn't lift her eyes. She kept scanning the manifest sheet against container markings, double-checking serials with unshakable patience. "Roger that, Staff Sergeant," she said evenly. "Just verifying the numbers on the classified shipment. Protocol requires it." Hunter scoffed. "Protocol doesn't mean you drag all morning. Some of us have quotas." Her gray eyes flicked up, calm, flat, unsettling. Classified materials require proper verification. Regulations are clear on that point. That was the thing about Michelle. She never raised her voice, never snapped back. She didn't need to. The quiet steadiness in her tone had the weight of someone who knew exactly what rules mattered and what happened when people cut corners. Hunter bristled, ready to push further, but the echo of polished boots on concrete silenced him. Captain Christopher Wade entered the bay. Conversations faltered. Even forklifts seemed to idle quieter. Wade had that effect. 20 years of service had carved experience into the lines around his eyes, into the way he walked, steady, deliberate, watchful. His inspections were infamous, unpredictable, thorough, impossible to bluff. Mistakes under his gaze weren't just noted, they carried consequences. "Morning, Staff Sergeant," Wade said, voice calm but edged with authority. "How are the shipments progressing?" "All on schedule, sir," Hunter replied quickly, stiffening his posture. "Hayes here's just finishing verification on Container 7 Alpha." Wade's eyes shifted to her. He saw what others missed. The subtle movements, the way she kept her back near solid cover, how her gaze flicked across approach routes without conscious effort. Small tells, almost invisible except to someone who had lived long enough in places where tells meant survival. "Civilian contractor Michelle Hayes, correct?" he asked, consulting his tablet. "Yes, sir. 3 years next month," she replied, not pausing her work. Wade nodded, but something didn't sit right. The file described her as a rural Texan with scattered jobs before landing steady employment at the depot. Average performance reviews, nothing remarkable. Yet the way she checked the cargo, it wasn't depot training. It was something else. "Mind if I observe your procedures?" Wade asked. "Of course, sir," she said politely, though her posture shifted, not nervous but wary, as if being seen too closely carried risks. He watched. Her checks were meticulous. Every serial matched, every seal examined, every protocol followed not just by the book, but with the ingrained habits of someone who had handled materials under combat pressure. She wasn't working like a civilian. She was working like someone who knew the cost of a single mistake could be lives. Wade frowned. He had seen this kind of precision before in war zones, in operations where failure wasn't an option. Then it happened. A gust of dry Texas wind caught her jacket, pulling it open just enough. Wade's eyes caught the glint. Bronze, a ribbon of faded blue. For a moment, his breath stilled. He knew that color, that shape, that weight. "Ms. Hayes," he said carefully, voice low but firm, "could I have a word with you, privately?" Her eyes met his. A flicker of weariness passed through them, as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. "Is there a problem with my work, sir?" "Not with your work," Wade replied, gesturing toward the small office nearby. "But I do have some questions." Hunter's smirk followed them as they walked away, convinced he just witnessed a contractor about to be reprimanded. The other workers paused, curiosity sparking whispers. For 3 years, Hayes had been invisible. Now, suddenly, she was. Wade closed the office door. He flicked on a small device, a scrambler against audio surveillance. That alone made Michelle's body tense, shifting unconsciously into something not civilian at all. "I'm going to ask you a direct question," Wade said, his eyes steady on hers. "What's the decoration you're wearing under that jacket?" Silence. Her mind calculated options: denial, deflection, or the truth. The metal had been buried, hidden for years, but a person could only hide so long. "I'm not sure what you mean, sir," she answered finally, but her tone betrayed the weight of knowing exactly what he meant. Wade leaned forward. "I've been in this uniform for over 2 decades. I know what I saw. That wasn't a trinket, that was valor." The quiet between them stretched tight, almost unbearable. Finally, her hand lifted. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled open the jacket. The Distinguished Service Cross glinted in the harsh office light. Wade's throat tightened. He read the engraving, and then his blood ran cold. 2,847 meters, he whispered. "Confirmed kill. Operation Desert Phoenix. Hostile sniper eliminated during sandstorm. Convoy saved." He looked up, stunned. That was the longest confirmed kill in U.S. military history. Michelle's eyes didn't waver. 3 years ago, different name, different life. "You're Gunnery Sergeant Michelle Raven Hayes," Wade said slowly, realization dawning. "Call sign Ghost." Her silence confirmed it. He exhaled sharply, packing once. 3 years hiding in a supply depot. Why? Why would someone with your record? "Because some achievements," she said quietly, voice cracking for the first time, "come with costs that don't fit into medals. Because sometimes survival isn't about service. It's about silence." Outside, forklifts hummed, cargo shifted, the world kept moving. But inside that office, everything changed. Why did the whispers spread faster than the trucks that rumbled through the gates? By noon, the mess hall was thick with rumor. Soldiers leaned across plastic trays, voices low but urgent, as if saying her name too loudly might summon her. Michelle Hayes, the quiet cargo loader, the woman who never argued, never complained, never asked for anything but the next manifest sheet. But now, someone had seen her in the captain's office. Someone had seen the captain's face when he left, pale and shaken. Someone swore they caught a glimpse of a medal, not just any medal, but one that didn't belong in a depot. Michelle sat alone at the far end of the hall, untouched food cooling on her tray. She, grown used to solitude, preferred it. But today, every silence around her felt heavy, too heavy. She could feel eyes on her. Not everyone, just enough to remind her that invisibility was gone. At a nearby table, 19-year-old Specialist Logan Anderson leaned in toward his friend, Private Scott Taylor. Both had worked alongside Michelle. Both had noticed the little things. How she lifted crates heavier than most men without hesitation. How she moved through the depot with the awareness of someone always scanning for angles of danger. "You hear anything?" Scott whispered, his round face drawn with curiosity. Logan nodded cautiously. Hunter got called into Wade's office after she did, came out looking like he'd seen a ghost, No pun intended. Ghost, Scott frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Logan lowered his voice further. It's a call sign. I don't know how I know that, but it fits. She's not who we thought. Scott glanced at Michelle across the room. She sat perfectly still, gray eyes fixed on some point far away, as if the noise of the mess hall didn't exist. She always seemed solid to me, Scott murmured. Quiet but solid. Before Logan could answer, another presence joined their table. Nicole Walker, communications specialist, sharp-eyed, sharp-minded. She set her tray down without asking, her voice low. I shouldn't even say this, she began, but Wade requested a priority background check through Marine Corps archives this morning. Deep verification, operational history included. Both young men froze. That kind of request wasn't for contractors. That kind of request wasn't for anyone ordinary. For Hayes, Scott asked, though the answer was already clear. Nicole nodded. Timeline matches perfectly. They sat in silence, piecing together fragments of truth. Logan's mind ticked like gears, assembling details that no one else had bothered to see. Her flawless procedures, her instinctive caution, her unshakable patience. She's not undercover, he said finally. She's something else, something bigger. The clatter of trays interrupted them. Master Sergeant Mary Johnson approached, a career soldier with lines of fatigue and wisdom etched into her face. She had been watching the whispers swell all morning. She knew when a storm was coming. Gentlemen, Specialist Walker, Johnson said formally, I hope I'm not interrupting. They straightened instinctively. No, ma'am. Johnson studied them, weighing her words. Tell me, what's your assessment of Contractor Hayes? Logan answered carefully. Professional, competent, never seen her make a mistake. Johnson's eyes flicked to Nicole. Anything unusual in her background? Nicole chose her words like stepping stones across a river. Her knowledge goes beyond civilian training. Inventory, security protocols, comms procedures. It's deeper than her file suggests. Johnson nodded slowly. Confirmation, that's what she'd expected. Sometimes, she said, voice lowering, people's records don't tell their whole story. Sometimes the best people are the ones trying hardest not to be seen. The table fell quiet. Across the mess hall, the door opened, and everything shifted. Captain Wade entered, but he wasn't alone. At his side was Dr. Patricia Green, a woman in civilian clothes but with the unmistakable bearing of authority. Gray hair, steady gaze, posture of someone who had spent her life standing beside soldiers without ever wearing their rank. A psychologist, veteran transition specialist. The kind of person you only brought in when things weren't simple anymore. Johnson exhaled almost to herself. So it's her. Eyes followed as Wade and Dr. Green sat at a distant table. No conversation was needed. The message was clear. Whatever Michelle Hayes had been hiding, it was now in the open. And Michelle, she didn't look at them, she didn't look at anyone. She left the hall without touching her food. Outside, the Texas sun glared down as she sat on a weathered picnic table near the vehicle bays. Alone, jacket pulled tight, hand brushing the hidden weight in her pocket, the Distinguished Service Cross. She hated carrying it, hated needing to, but letting it go had been impossible. She stared at the metal's outline beneath the fabric, and for the first time in years, she whispered aloud. I should have buried you. A shadow stretched across the bench. Mind if I sit? She looked up. Chief Warrant Officer Bob Wilson. Silver hair, grease-stained hands, the kind of man who knew machines better than people. Yet he had always treated her with respect. Never looked down on her, never pried. Just shared the quiet space when it was needed. Go ahead, Chief, Michelle said softly. He lowered himself onto the bench with the groan of old joints. Word travels fast. About you. Michelle's lips pressed into a thin line. It always does. Wilson studied her in silence for a moment. Then, Question is it going to be a problem for you or an opportunity? She almost laughed, the sound caught in her throat instead. Depends on what they want from me. I didn't come here for recognition. I came for peace. Wilson nodded, like he understood more than he let on. Lot of us are chasing the same thing. Problem is, peace doesn't always mean running from who you are. Before she could answer, her pocket vibrated. She froze, not the depot-issued radio, not her personal phone, the other device, the one she'd sworn never to power on unless. Hands trembling, she pulled it out. A secure communicator. Old, scarred, but still linked to the one part of her life she'd tried to sever. The screen lit with a single encrypted message. Her blood ran cold as she read it. Operational asset required. Domestic crisis. Report within 72 hours. Authorization. Marine Force Recon Command. Her chest tightened. Breath shallow. She stared at the words as if looking longer might make them vanish. But they stayed. Wilson saw her face pale. Problem. She swallowed hard, deleting the message before he could see. Maybe, or maybe just the past, catching up. The rest of the afternoon blurred. She went through the motions, logging shipments, signing manifests, nodding at orders. But her mind was elsewhere. Her hands knew what to do, they always had, but her thoughts were miles away. Every echo of boots, every slam of a container, every flicker of sunlight off steel, it all pulled her back. Back to Afghanistan, back to the ridgeline, back to the voice of gunnery Sergeant Jim White in her headset. Ghost, 2,847 meters, wind east at 15 knots. You've got one shot. The depot around her dissolved. Heat shimmered into desert haze. Crates became rocks. Forklifts became armored trucks. The past alive again. Haze. The voice snapped her back. Corporal Terry Lewis stood at the security checkpoint, his young face serious. Captain Wade's updated your clearance, he said. Your authorized Bravo-level access while your file under review. Michelle took the tablet he offered, forcing her hand to steady. Bravo-level clearance, not for cargo loaders, not for civilians. Wade was moving her somewhere she hadn't wanted to go. Any special protocols? She asked, her voice even. Standard verification, Lewis said, but his eyes betrayed unease. Colonel Clark wants extra documentation on comms gear and tactical shipments. Michelle nodded, understood. She returned to her work, but she felt the shift. People were watching differently now, not with indifference, with curiosity, with suspicion. The whispers had taken root. And in the shadows of the depot, where ordinary routines masked extraordinary secrets, one truth pressed in on her with unbearable weight. She could no longer pretend to be invisible. Why did the black SUVs arrive without warning? The depot wasn't used to visitors like these. 3 of them rolled in mid-afternoon, tires hissing against the hot concrete, windows tinted, plates unmarked. Engines idled with a low growl that made conversations die in mid-sentence. Men and women stepped out in plain suits, but there was nothing plain about them. The way they scanned the perimeter, the way they adjusted earpieces, the way they moved smooth, sharp, alert. Federal. Michelle watched from the shadows of Bay Alpha 7, clipboard in hand, pen poised above a serial sheet she'd already checked twice. Outwardly calm. Inwardly, every nerve bristled. Federal meant discovery. Federal meant questions she couldn't keep dodging. Federal meant the past had stopped knocking and started kicking the door open. They're here for you, Logan Anderson muttered under his breath. He was standing nearby, shifting cargo straps, pretending to focus on work. Michelle didn't respond, but he wasn't wrong. Inside the admin building, the suits disappeared with Captain Wade. Staff Sergeant Kyle Hunter emerged a short while later, and he looked different. Gone was the smug arrogance that usually dripped from his posture. His face was pale, jaw tight, eyes wild with something that looked uncomfortably close to fear. But fear twisted quickly into something else, anger. He spotted Michelle across the loading bay, and his stride turned sharp, shoulders squared. Hayes, his voice cracked across the depot, louder than necessary. Heads turned, conversation stilled, forklifts slowed, exactly the kind of scene Michelle despised. She turned calmly, clipboard still in hand. "Staff Sergeant." "What the hell kind of games are you playing?" Hunter's face flushed red, his voice trembling with fury and maybe panic. "Captain Wade spent 2 hours grilling me about your performance, your background, your so-called clearance. You're a civilian contractor. Civilian. So what the hell is going on?" Eyes fixed on them. Workers leaned casually, but not casually enough against containers. Security paused mid-patrol. 100 tiny attentions aimed like spotlights. Michelle held his gaze, her tone even. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't give me that innocent act." Hunter's voice rose. "Federal agents don't just stroll into this depot to talk about cargo loaders. You've been hiding something big, and I want to know what." The crowd thickened. Logan moved closer, instinctively protective, though he was smart enough to keep his words measured. "Staff Sergeant," he said carefully, "maybe this conversation would be better handled in." "Shut it, Anderson," Hunter snapped. "This is between me and her." Michelle's jaw tightened. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. Just said softly but firmly, "If you have concerns about my work, you should bring them to Captain Wade." Hunter sneered. "This isn't about your work. This is about who the hell you really are." Something inside Michelle shifted. The world blurred at the edges. His raised voice, his aggressive stance, the way the air seemed to thicken with hostility. It all collapsed into something else, something older, something sharper. Heat, blinding heat. The stench of burning fuel. The sound, that hollow, distant thump of incoming mortars. She was back there, Afghanistan, forward operating base Viper. Ghost, eyes up. Movement at 2,847 meters. Hostile sniper engaging convoy. Gunnery Sergeant Jim White's calm voice cut through the chaos in her memory. She could feel the M40A5 pressed against her cheek, the bipod biting into the sand, her pulse slowing to that familiar sniper's rhythm. "Wind gusting east 15 knots, temp 108, you've got one shot." She blinked. The depot swam into view again, Hunter's furious face inches from her own. His spit hit her cheek as he barked, "Are you even listening to me?" Michelle inhaled, slow and steady, grounding herself. Dr. Green's voice echoed faintly in her training. "Breathe, anchor, return." "Yes, Staff Sergeant," she said softly. "I'm listening." Logan saw it, the flicker in her eyes, the half-second absence. His gut clenched. He'd seen that look before on his grandfather's face when Vietnam came back uninvited. He knew what it meant. Before Hunter could spit another word, another voice cut through the bay. "Staff Sergeant Hunter." Every head turned. Master Sergeant Mary Johnson stood at the edge of the scene, arms crossed, expression carved in stone. Her voice was calm but heavy with authority. "Captain Wade requires your presence in the admin building. Immediately." Hunter froze, his bravado cracked. Everyone knew Johnson didn't make requests. She delivered orders, and her tone right now left no room for argument. Hunter's face twitched with rage, but fear won. He turned sharply, storming off toward the admin building, the crowd parting in silence to let him through. Johnson stepped closer to Michelle, her weathered eyes steady, her voice gentler now. "Miss Hayes, would you prefer to transfer to standard shipments for the rest of the afternoon?" Michelle considered it. A graceful exit, a chance to disappear again if only for a few hours. But that wasn't who she was, not anymore. "No, Master Sergeant," she said, voice firm. "The classified inventory needs to be completed on schedule. I'll finish it." Johnson studied her a moment, then nodded with approval. "Very well, Anderson, assist her." As Johnson walked away, Logan stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Hayes, Whatever your real background is, just know not everyone here is against you. Some of us see what you're capable of." Michelle's eyes softened just barely. "Thank you, that means more than you know." But Logan's mind wouldn't let go of one detail. The sniper optics she had identified earlier, instantly, flawlessly. No civilian could have known those codes, and the look in her eyes during Hunter's outburst, that faraway, haunted distance. He leaned in a little closer. "Can I ask you something? And you don't have to answer if you don't want to." Michelle hesitated, then nodded. "Those optics earlier, the ones you called sniper gear, how do you really know those manufacturer codes?" Her breath caught, 3 years of hiding pressed against the walls of her chest. Logan's gaze wasn't prying, wasn't accusatory, it was curious, respectful. "Sometimes," she said carefully, "people have backgrounds that don't fit in a file, and sometimes those backgrounds matter in ways no one expects." Logan nodded. "Fair enough, just if things ever get bad, you won't be standing alone." Michelle didn't answer, but her grip on the clipboard tightened. And then the sound came. Engines, heavy, low, the kind that didn't belong to depot vehicles. She turned toward the gates just in time to see the black SUVs again, more this time, sliding to a halt in the setting sun. Doors opened. Agents poured out, crisp, silent, efficient. The air thickened. Rumors weren't rumors anymore. Michelle's 3 years of invisibility were gone. And for the first time in a long time, she felt the ghost of the desert pressing close, as if Afghanistan had followed her all the way home. Why was the room so quiet, when the world outside still roared with engines and orders? The blinds in Captain Wade's office were drawn. A muted lamp glowed against the wood-paneled walls, casting long shadows that seemed to lean in close. The hum of an air conditioner filled the silence like a whisper no one wanted to break. Michelle sat across from Wade and Dr. Patricia Green, her jacket zipped high, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked like a woman awaiting judgment. But it wasn't fear of punishment that weighed on her, it was fear of being seen. Wade leaned forward slightly, elbows on the desk. He spoke carefully, each word chosen with deliberate weight. "Ms. Hayes, or should I say Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, you know as well as I do that what we've uncovered doesn't stay buried forever. The agents outside, they want answers. I want them too. But before anyone else hears your story, I need to hear it. From you." Dr. Green's voice was gentler. "Michelle, no one is here to put you on trial. We're here to understand, and maybe to help you carry some of what you've been holding alone." Michelle's jaw tightened. She wanted to laugh, bitter and sharp. "Help me carry it." No one had carried it but her. For 3 years she dragged it behind her like a shadow chained to her soul. Her fingers brushed the edge of the metal in her pocket, the bronze cross, cold, heavy, unyielding. "You really want to know," she said finally, her voice low, almost a whisper. "Fine, I'll tell you, but don't expect it to be something worth honoring." The room leaned into her silence. Her eyes lost focus, drifting past Wade, past Dr. Green, past the safe walls of the office, back to a desert that never left her. It was 2019, Helmand Province, Operation Desert Phoenix. We'd been running convoy support for weeks, back and forth across terrain where the enemy knew every ridge better than we did. We lost 3 men the first week, 2 more the second. I learned to stop writing letters home for the new guys because I knew I'd be writing the same letter again too soon. Her breath hitched, she steadied it. That day we got word of a sniper, not just any sniper. Someone who'd been trained, someone patient. He'd taken out 2 drivers and a gunner in less than 10 minutes. 1 shot each. Clean. My Gunnery Sergeant White told me I was the only one who had a chance of countering him. He was right. It was my job. Her hand pressed harder into her pocket, knuckles white. We set up on a ridgeline. Wind was erratic, east at 15 knots, gusting higher. The sandstorm was rolling in fast. I had seconds to find him, seconds to calculate. And then I saw him, silhouette against the ridge, muzzle flash like a spark against the storm. Her voice dropped. 2,847 meters, longest shot of my life, longest shot in history. White's voice in my headset, "Ghost, you've got one shot." And I took it. Silence pressed into the room like a weight. Wade's voice was low, steady, "And you hit." Michelle's eyes flickered. I hit. Dead center, enemy sniper neutralized, convoy saved. That's what the report says, that's what the medal says, that's what they pinned on me in front of the cameras. She shook her head slowly, her voice trembling now. But the report doesn't say what else I saw. It doesn't say what came after. Dr. Green leaned in gently. "What did you see, Michelle?" Michelle's breath came shallow, her throat tight. "He wasn't alone." Her words cracked like glass. "When we reached his position, when the sand cleared, there was a boy, 12, maybe 13, thin, dust in his hair. His rifle, no, his father's rifle, was still warm. The man I killed had been teaching him, training him. And when he fell, the boy didn't cry. He just picked up the scope and stared at us with eyes too old for his face." Her voice broke. "I killed his father, and I created something worse. That boy will never forget. He'll grow up with hate carved into his bones. My bullet didn't save the future. It might have doomed it." The silence after her words was suffocating. Wade sat motionless, jaw tight, eyes dark with the weight of truths soldiers never put in official reports. Dr. Green's eyes softened, her voice quiet but steady. "You did what you had to do. You saved lives that day. Dozens, maybe hundreds." Michelle's laugh was bitter, sharp, and condemned another. "You think that boy doesn't remember my face, my rifle. You think he won't become the same monster his father was. I didn't stop the cycle. I fed it." She stood abruptly, packing the room. Her boots hit the floor with sharp echoes. "That's what none of you understand. Everyone wanted to celebrate me. Longest kill, record holder, poster girl for precision. They called me a legend. But all I saw was a child standing where my bullet landed." Her hands trembled. She pressed them against the desk, leaning forward, gray eyes burning into Wade's. "That's why I left. That's why I buried the name Ghost. That's why I buried Michelle Hayes, gunnery sergeant. Because I couldn't wear that uniform and pretend the medal made it worth it." Wade rose slowly, his own voice steady but weighted with respect. "You don't think we've all carried ghosts like that? Every one of us who's pulled a trigger, given an order, written the letter home. We've all seen the cost. You're not alone in that." She shook her head fiercely. "No, you don't get it. The difference is they celebrated me for it. They put me on a stage. They made me a symbol, and the truth is I don't deserve to be one." Dr. Green stood now too, her voice calm but firm. "Michelle, symbols are never about truth. They're about what people need to believe. But beneath that, beneath the cameras and the medals, you're still a human being. And you're allowed to grieve what it cost you. You're allowed to hurt. You're allowed to be more than just the shot you took." Michelle's chest heaved, her breath uneven. She wanted to believe that. She wanted to let it be true. But the boy's eyes still stared back at her every night. Wade stepped closer, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. "You don't have to keep carrying this alone. The agents outside, they want the sniper. They want the hero, but I see the woman. And I think the woman still has a place here, a purpose. Not to fight, not to kill, but to remind us what the cost really is." Her eyes flicked to his. For the first time, something softened in her expression. Not forgiveness, not peace, but the faintest flicker of something she thought she'd lost years ago. "Hope." She sank back into the chair, exhausted, drained. The weight of confession hung heavy, but for once she wasn't the only one holding it. Dr. Green's voice was almost a whisper. "The question isn't what you did, Michelle. The question is what you'll do now." The lamp hummed, the air conditioner whirred, and for the first time in 3 years Michelle didn't feel invisible, she felt seen. And that terrified her more than the desert ever had. Why did they send so many, just for one woman? The conference room at Riverside Depot had never seen this kind of audience. Agents in pressed suits lined one wall, laptops glowing with classified seals. Two stood at the door, their stance too rigid to be mistaken for casual security. At the head of the table sat Colonel Daniel Clark, his presence filling the room even before he spoke. Michelle sat across from him, jacket zipped high, hands still, face unreadable. To anyone else, she was just a contractor pulled in for a routine debrief. But the tension crackling in the air told another story. Wade stood off to the side, arms folded. He wasn't part of the agency's circle, but he refused to leave Michelle to them alone. Dr. Green sat nearby too, calm, observant, the anchor in a storm she knew was about to break. Colonel Clark's voice was steady, firm. "Gunnery Sergeant Hayes, Ghost, we've verified your record, we know who you are, and we know what you've done, which is why we're here." Michelle didn't blink. "I'm not a gunnery sergeant anymore, I'm a cargo loader." Clark leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "You can tell yourself that if you want, but the truth is, you're the best sniper this country has ever produced, and we need you again." The words dropped like a hammer. Michelle's stomach twisted. She had expected questions, maybe even exposure, but recruitment, after everything she'd left behind. "I'm not interested," she said flatly. Clark's jaw tightened. "This isn't about interest, it's about necessity. There's a situation developing stateside, a potential domestic terror network forming cells across the Southwest. We have intelligence pointing to a high-value target, a foreign-trained sniper leading them. Someone who already has blood on his hands. Someone who knows our terrain better than we wish he did." Michelle's pulse quickened, but her face remained stone. "You have teams for that, units trained and ready." Clark's eyes narrowed. "None with your record, none with your range. This man has already outpaced two of our best. We can't afford another failure." Michelle leaned back slightly, her voice low but edged. "And you think dragging me out of hiding is your solution? You think putting a rifle back in my hands will fix your problem?" Wade stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "Colonel, with respect, Hayes left the service for a reason. Forcing her back into that world isn't just reckless. It's dangerous for her, for all of us." Clark's gaze flicked to Wade, then back to Michelle. "I'm not forcing, I'm asking. But understand this, Hayes, if you refuse, others may pay the price. People who don't have your skill, your steadiness, your history. Can you live with that?" The words cut deep. A blade twisted in her chest. Could she live with that? She thought of the boy in the desert, his eyes, his silence, his hatred. She thought of the convoy she had saved, the lives she had spared, the ones she had ended. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I already live with it." Dr. Green leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Colonel, let me remind you, Michelle isn't just a record. She's a human being. Dragging her into another mission without acknowledging what she carries isn't leadership. It's exploitation." Clark exhaled sharply, frustration flashing in his eyes. "Doctor, with all due respect, my job isn't therapy. It's national security." "And mine," Green countered, "is making sure national security doesn't destroy the people it leans on." The room grew taut, a rope pulled between duty and humanity. Michelle sat at its center, silent, absorbing both sides, feeling like she was being torn in two. Finally she spoke. "If I say no, will you leave me here? Will you let me stay buried in this depot?" Clark's pause was too long. The answer was clear before he said it. "We can't make that promise." Her chest tightened. There it was, the truth she had feared. She wasn't invisible anymore. They wouldn't let her be. She stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. Her voice was low, measured, but laced with steel. "You want me for your mission. But understand this, if I go, it won't be for medals or glory or headlines. It won't be because I owe you. It will be because I choose to. And if I choose to, it will be on my terms." Clark studied her, weighing the defiance in her eyes. Finally, he gave the faintest nod. "Fair enough. You'll have 48 hours. Think it over. Decide whether you want to help stop what's coming or whether you want to watch it burn from the sidelines. The meeting ended without ceremony. The agents filed out, leaving silence in their wake. Clark was the last to leave, his words hanging in the air like smoke. Michelle stood motionless, staring at the closed door. Wade stepped closer, his voice quiet. "You don't owe them anything, Hayes. Don't let them corner you." Her reply was almost too soft to hear. "But what if they're right? What if not acting costs more lives than I've already taken?" Wade's expression tightened, but he didn't answer. Some questions had no clean answers. Dr. Green touched Michelle's arm gently. "Whatever choice you make sure it's yours, not theirs." That night, Michelle couldn't sleep. She sat on her bunk in the contractor barracks, jacket draped over her knees, metal clutched tight in her palm. The bronze caught the dim light, cold and unforgiving. Her mind wandered back to the boy again, his silence, his stare. She wondered where he was now. Was he training? Was he already fighting? Was she about to face another child forced into a war he didn't choose? Her chest ached. She pressed the metal harder into her palm until the edges dug into skin. She welcomed the sting. Pain meant she was still here, still alive. The sound of footsteps pulled her from her spiral. Logan Anderson appeared in the doorway, hesitant but earnest. "Hayes," he said softly, "I heard about the meeting. I don't know what they asked you, but if they're trying to drag you back into something dangerous, just know you've got people here who'd stand by you. Not because of what you did, but because of who you are now." Her throat tightened. She managed a faint nod. "Thank you, Logan." After he left, she stared at the medal one last time. Then she slipped it back into her pocket, zipped her jacket, and lay down on the bunk. Sleep didn't come, but resolve did. She wasn't sure what choice she'd make in 48 hours. But she knew this much. For the first time in 3 years, she would have to choose not whether to live in the shadows, but whether to step back into the light, knowing exactly what it would cost. Why did the rifle feel heavier now, after all these years? The depot's training range stretched flat against the horizon, an open wound of dirt and steel targets shimmering in the Texas sun. It wasn't designed for snipers. Just standard-issue qualification, 300 meters, 500 at most. But today, it wasn't about the range. It was about her. Michelle stood at the bench, hands hovering above the rifle laid out before her. Not her old M40A5, the one she'd known like an extension of her body. This was an M2010 enhanced sniper rifle issued to select Army units, borrowed under Wade's authority. Matte black, precision-tuned, scope gleaming in the light. A weapon meant for distance. Her palms were slick with sweat. 3 years of silence, 3 years of forklifts and manifests, 3 years of pretending the rifle didn't exist, all of it pressed down on her chest. Wade stood a few feet back, arms crossed, eyes steady but not intrusive. He knew better than to push. Dr. Green was there too, quiet in the shade, a notebook in her lap, observing, anchoring. Michelle inhaled, exhaled. The smell of gun oil stirred memories she'd fought to bury. Afghanistan, sand, blood, the boy's stare. Her fingers finally closed around the stock. The weight sank into her shoulders, heavy, familiar, unforgiving. She lowered herself prone on the mat. Muscle memory took over before her mind could resist. Left elbow locked, right hand adjusting the cheek rest, eyes settling behind the glass. The scope snapped the world into focus. The target, 500 meters, steel silhouette stood crisp against the blur of heat waves. She adjusted windage instinctively, even though the crosswind was minimal. Her breathing slowed. The depot faded. The boy's face pressed at the edges of her mind, but she pushed it down, focusing on the rhythm she had lived by for years. Breathe. Pause. Squeeze. The shot cracked across the range, echoing like thunder. Steel rang, dead center. Wade's brow lifted. Dr. Green's pen stilled. Michelle's heart hammered. She set the rifle down as if it burned. But Wade's voice was calm, low, still there. Her jaw clenched. That's the problem. She rose to her knees, wiping her palms on her pants. The air felt suffocating. She wanted to walk away, to shove the rifle back in its case and never touch it again. But her body betrayed her. She turned back, loaded another round, settled behind the scope. Breathe. Pause. Squeeze. Another shot, another clang of steel. And again. And again. The group tightened, 5 rounds within an inch. Her hands were steady now, her heart slower, her breathing measured. It was as if the rifle had been waiting all this time, patient, knowing she would return. She hated it. She hated how natural it felt. When the last casing hit the dirt, she sat back, trembling. Wade finally stepped forward. His voice was quiet, respectful. You haven't lost it, not an inch. That's not just talent, that's something rare, something we can't replace. Michelle shook her head, voice rough. You don't understand. Every shot I take, I see his face. The boy, the one left behind, the one who will grow into everything I was supposed to stop. That's what lives inside every bullet I fire. Dr. Green spoke now, her tone calm, even. Michelle, have you ever considered that the rifle isn't the enemy? That maybe it's only a mirror. It doesn't create who you are. It only shows you. Michelle stared at the weapon, chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. And what if the mirror shows a monster? Green's gaze softened. Then maybe the monster isn't in the rifle. Maybe it's in the silence you've carried. Maybe the rifle is just how you faced it once, and maybe how you'll face it again. Michelle wanted to argue. She wanted to scream, but the words died on her lips. Wade crouched beside her, his voice low. They're asking you to take one more shot, just one, against someone who's already killed, someone who won't stop. Maybe this time the cost won't be a boy. Maybe this time the cost will be not taking the shot. Her eyes burned. And if I miss? Then you'll still be you, Wade said. Not the legend, not Ghost, just Michelle Hayes, and that's enough. The silence hung heavy. The rifle lay before her, black and gleaming as if daring her to choose. Finally she stood. I need time. Wade nodded. You've got until tomorrow night. After that, Clark will make his call. Michelle left the range, her steps uneven, her chest tight. She felt Logan's eyes on her as she passed the younger soldiers watching from a distance. Respect, curiosity, maybe even hope. She ignored it. In her bunk that night she couldn't sleep. She lay in darkness, hands clasped behind her head, staring at the ceiling. The sound of her shots still rang in her ears, the echo of steel, the echo of ghosts. At some point near dawn she rose. She pulled the medal from her pocket, held it in the dim light. The Distinguished Service Cross, cold, heavy, the mirror of who she had been. Her whisper broke the silence. Am I still her, or am I something else now? No answer came, only the memory of the boy's eyes. And the knowledge that tomorrow she would have to decide whether to pick up the rifle, not as Ghost, not as the legend, but as Michelle Hayes, a woman who knew the cost of every trigger pull better than anyone alive. Why did the call come early, when she thought she still had time? The alarm blared in the depot at 4:30. Not a drill, not the routine security test. This was different. Shrill, insistent, the kind of tone that yanked everyone upright before their eyes even opened. Michelle was already awake, sitting on the edge of her bunk, metal clenched in her fist. She shoved it into her pocket as boots thundered in the hallway. Soldiers shouted, radios crackled, the depot alive with urgency. Captain Wade appeared at her door. His face said everything before he spoke. Hayes, it's happening. Her chest tightened. I thought I had until tonight. So did we, Wade replied grimly. But the situation escalated. Our target been spotted stateside. Moving fast, if we don't act, he's gone. She rose slowly, every muscle taut. Then say it straight, who is he? Wade hesitated. And in that silence, Michelle's pulse quickened. "Tell me," she demanded, her voice sharper than she intended. He exhaled. "His name is Khalid al-Said, former insurgent sniper, trained by Iranians deployed across Helmand. After your shot took out his brother 3 years ago, intelligence suggests he swore revenge. He's been building a network, and now he's here." Michelle's stomach dropped. The boy. Her voice was barely a whisper. "How old?" Wade's eyes flickered, the truth written before he spoke it. 17, maybe 18, old enough to fight, old enough to kill. Her legs almost gave out. The room tilted. The boy's face surged back, dust, silence, hatred. Only now, older, harder, carrying a rifle that once belonged to his father. "No," she breathed, "it can't be him." "It is," Wade said softly. "And he's already killed 2 federal agents on U.S. soil." Michelle turned away, bracing herself against the wall. Her breath came shallow, ragged. The past wasn't just following her. It had arrived. Dr. Green appeared then, called in as soon as the crisis began. Her voice was steady, calm, a lifeline in the storm. "Michelle, look at me." Michelle's eyes lifted, gray and storming. "You've spent 3 years haunted by what you left behind," Green said gently. "Now the past is here. You don't get to run anymore, but you do get to choose how you face it." Michelle's throat tightened. "If I pull the trigger again, I finish what I started. I kill him. I kill the boy I already broke." Wade's voice cut in firm. "If you don't, he'll kill others. He's already proving it. This isn't about revenge anymore. This is about stopping a cycle before it spreads." Michelle pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting tears that refused to fall. "Why me? Why always me?" Green's reply was soft, almost a whisper. "Because you can. And because maybe, just maybe, you're the only one who understands what it means to end it without losing your own humanity." The room held its breath. Finally, Michelle lowered her hands. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Where is he?" Wade met her eyes. "Downtown El Paso, rooftop near the rail yard. He's setting up. If we move now, we can intercept before he strikes." Michelle nodded once, a sharp, decisive motion. "Then let's go." The convoy rolled out before dawn, black SUVs slicing through empty highways. Michelle sat in the back seat, the rifle case across her knees. Her hands rested on it lightly, but her grip betrayed the storm inside. Every mile closer felt heavier. She wasn't just driving toward a mission. She was driving toward her ghosts, toward the boy's stare, toward the choice she had feared for 3 years. At the rail yard, the vehicles stopped short of the perimeter. Agents fanned out, weapons ready. Wade stayed close to Michelle, his voice low. "We've got eyes on him. Building 6, rooftop. He's carrying a Dragunov. Old but deadly in the right hands." Michelle's stomach clenched. Of course it was a Dragunov, his father's rifle, passed from one generation of sniper to the next. She climbed the ladder to the counter position, each rung like a heartbeat in her chest. The sky was pale with dawn, the horizon painted in bruised pinks and grays. The city stretched quiet below, unaware of the battle unfolding in its shadow. At the rooftop edge, she laid the rifle down. She adjusted the scope, the bipod, her breathing. Every motion automatic, every motion hated. Through the glass, the world snapped into focus. And there he was. 17, maybe 18. Broad shoulders now, but the same face, the same eyes. The boy from the desert, now hardened into something colder. He adjusted the Dragunov with ease, scanning the streets below. Michelle's breath hitched. Her finger hovered above the trigger. Time slowed. She saw flashes, his father falling in the storm. The boy's stare, silent and sharp. Her metal gleaming under the lights she never wanted. The metal in her pocket now, cold against her thigh. Her scope trembled. Wade's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Hayes, you've got the shot, take it." Her lips parted, her whisper was barely audible. "I can't." "Hayes." "I can't," she said again, louder this time. Through the scope, she saw his hand steady, his breath slow, his finger tightening on the trigger aimed at the street below. Her heart pounded. She knew the rhythm. She knew the moment. Breathe. Pause. Squeeze. Her rifle lowered. No, she whispered, not like this. But even as she pulled away from the scope, she knew someone else would take the shot if she didn't. Someone without her hesitation. Someone who wouldn't see the boy. And the boy would die anyway. Her chest burned, her mind spiraled. She wasn't sure what scared her more, pulling the trigger or not pulling it at all. The radio crackled again, Wade's voice urgent. Hayes, decide now. Why did the world feel so silent when death was only a heartbeat away? Michelle's finger hovered above the trigger, her breath caught, shallow and uneven. Through the scope, the boy steadied his Dragunov on the rooftop across the way. A teenager, but not a child anymore. Shoulders squared, jaw clenched, eyes like cold steel. The same eyes that had once stared at her across a desert ridge. Her voice cracked in the earpiece. I see him. Captain Wade's tone came urgent, controlled. Then take him, Hayes. He's seconds away from firing on civilians. Seconds, that was all she had. Seconds to decide whether she was going to finish what began years ago or find another way. Her body remembered the rhythm. Breathe. Pause. Squeeze. But her heart rebelled. Dr. Green's voice slid into the channel, calm but insistent. Michelle, remember what I told you. You don't have to become Ghost again. You can act as Michelle Hayes. You get to choose who pulls that trigger. Her grip faltered, sweat stung her eyes, she blinked hard. Through the scope, the boy's face sharpened. His lips moved, she couldn't hear the words, but she knew them anyway. A prayer, a vow, a curse. And then he shifted. The Dragunov angled down toward the street, where morning commuters were beginning to gather. Now Hayes, Wade barked. Michelle's whole body screamed. The rifle wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was the mirror, and the mirror showed her the truth. If she killed him, she'd kill the last part of herself she hadn't already buried. No, she whispered. Instead, she shifted her scope 2 inches left. The boy's shoulder filled her reticle. She slowed her breath. Breathe. Pause. Squeeze. The shot cracked like thunder. The boy spun sideways, the Dragunov clattering from his hands. A scream tore from his throat as he collapsed onto the rooftop, clutching his shattered arm. Alive. Disarmed. Agents swarmed. Radios lit with static and shouts. Within minutes, black-clad figures breached the building, storming the stairs, dragging the boy into custody. His eyes never left Michelle's rooftop. Fury, pain, but also confusion. She lowered her rifle. Her arms trembled. Her breath came ragged, but her heart was steady. She had taken the shot, but not the one they wanted, not the one history demanded. Wade's voice broke into her headset, shock then relief. You didn't kill him. No, Michelle said softly, I didn't. Why? Her gaze stayed fixed on the boy being hauled away in cuffs. Because someone had to break the cycle. If I killed him, I'd only be proving him right. I'd be the monster he already believed I was. Silence filled the channel. Then Dr. Green's voice, calm, almost proud. You chose mercy. Michelle's throat tightened. No, I chose to live with myself. Back on the ground, the scene buzzed with chaos. Agents swarmed vehicles. Civilians were pushed back behind barricades. The boy screamed curses in a language Michelle hadn't heard since Helmand. But she kept walking, rifle slung low, jacket zipped high. She felt the stares, not of strangers this time, of her own. Logan Anderson, Nicole Walker, even Master Sergeant Johnson, they stood back, watching her pass, their eyes filled with something more than curiosity now. Respect. Not for Ghost, not for the legend, for Michelle Hayes. Wade caught up, his steps quick. You know Clark won't like this. He wanted a kill, a clean end. Michelle's lips curved, just barely. Clean ends don't exist, only choices we learn to live with. He exhaled, shaking his head, but there was pride in his eyes. Dr. Green walked beside her, voice soft. You broke the record once by distance, but this time you broke something more important. Michelle glanced at her. What's that? Green smiled faintly. The silence. For the first time in years, Michelle felt the tightness in her chest loosen. Not gone, it never would be, but lighter, like maybe, just maybe, she could breathe without the desert pressing against her lungs. That evening, back at the depot, the medal sat on her bunk. She stared at it for a long time, fingers brushing its cold surface. It would always be hers, whether she wanted it or not. But now, it no longer felt like a curse. It felt like a reminder. Not of the kill, not of the record, not of the boy she almost destroyed, but of the choice she had made when the world demanded she be a ghost again, and she chose instead to be human. As the sun dipped low, painting the depot in gold and shadow, Michelle whispered into the quiet. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And for the first time in 3 years, she believed it.